On April 1977, what began as a routine family walk on Dartmoor would become the start of a disturbing mystery. Alan Hicks was out with his family strolling through Hollowcombe Bottom, a remote valley situated just outside Postbridge, when they encountered what appeared to be a herd of Dartmoor ponies resting under the sun. However, as they approached for a closer look, they realized that all 15 ponies were dead. According to multiple descriptions, some accounts specify that the discovery was made below White Tor in a small remote valley, with 4 ponies initially found, followed by the discovery of 11 more animals only 100 yards away. The incident was immediately reported to authorities, but despite detailed investigations, no convincing explanation for the deaths was ever provided. The animals showed clear evidence of violent trauma, with broken necks and spines suggesting they had died from some form of forceful impact. The injuries appeared consistent with having been thrown into the air and then crashed back down onto the rocky terrain below. Perhaps even more mysteriously, witnesses reported that the carcasses were decomposing at an extraordinarily fast rate, much faster than would be expected under normal circumstances. This rapid decomposition became a key element in subsequent theories about the cause of death, particularly among those who suspected supernatural or extraterrestrial involvement. One of the most discussed explanations centered on redworm parasites. The theory suggested that the ponies had died from heavy infestations of these parasites, which have a life cycle that sees them encyst in the gut wall during winter and emerge en masse in spring. This sudden emergence can cause severe problems and even death in horses. Small redworms are one of the most common parasite threats to horse health, with figures suggesting that 95% of parasite burdens found in horses are small redworm. However, this theory faced significant challenges. The explanation could not account for the broken bones found on the ponies. Additionally, such severe infestations typically occur only when animals are densely stocked on contaminated pastures, which the area was not known to be. Another hypothesis suggested that the ponies were grazing in the valley when a sudden and violent torrent of water burst down from a waterfall, smashing the animals against the boulders scattered throughout the valley. This theory drew support from historical reports of torrential waters on Dartmoor, powerful enough to wash away granite slabs from clapper bridges. Some investigators proposed that the animals had died in separate locations and were subsequently dumped in Hollowcombe Bottom to avoid the hassle of disposing of multiple carcasses across a wide area. This theory seemed unlikely given that the location was only about 2 kilometers from a vehicular access point, making it an impractical dumping ground if the goal was to conceal the deaths. The most sensational explanation came from the Devon Unidentified Object Center in Torquay. Their theory proposed that the pony herd was grazing peacefully when an alien spacecraft hovered overhead. According to this hypothesis, the vortex created by the craft's propulsion system generated a powerful downdraft that lifted the ponies into the air before they fell back down, smashing themselves on the rocks and boulders below. This theory gained footing among UFO enthusiasts who pointed to the extraordinarily rapid decomposition of the carcasses as evidence of extraterrestrial involvement. The mystery gained renewed attention in 2000 when Mike Freeberry became interested in the case due to press coverage. Mike's investigation would eventually lead to the publication of a comprehensive book on the subject, and connections to other unexplained animal deaths worldwide. He discovered that horrific unexplained animal deaths and mutilations had been occurring all over the world for many years. As he became more fascinated by the phenomenon and began investigating incidents for himself, he somewhat reluctantly came to a controversial conclusion. The mutilations appeared to be a sampling program by extraterrestrial intelligence, and evidence was being systematically covered up and denied by government departments worldwide. The investigation took on new dimensions when, in January 2005, 7 sheep were found horribly mutilated near Pew Tor. Later that year, in October 2005, a similar incident occurred involving another 4 sheep. Various explanations were offered for these deaths, with occult activity being the favored theory. Mike began to suspect connections between these incidents and the original pony deaths. The unexplained sheep killings continued for the next 2 years, with most occurring in the same vicinity. The sheep were found with necks inexplicably broken, and post-mortem examinations revealed that their tongues had been surgically removed. Furthermore, some of them had their eyes missing and internal organs extracted through their anus. While Mike's investigation was extensive, it has faced criticism from other researchers. John Downs of the Center for Fortean Zoology published a critical review of Killers on the Moor in 2011, noting several factual errors and inconsistencies in Mike's account. John pointed out specific mistakes regarding dates, organizational names, and the involvement of other researchers, raising questions about the reliability of other aspects of the investigation. Terrence Williams and Felipe Santos, two men residing in Collier County, Florida, disappeared under strikingly similar and troubling circumstances during the early 2000s. Both were last seen in the custody of the same law enforcement officer, Deputy Stephen Calkins of the Collier County Sheriff's Office. Despite numerous investigations and national attention, their fates remain unknown. Terrence Williams was 27 years old at the time of his disappearance on January 12, 2004. Originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee, Williams had moved to Naples, Florida, hoping for a fresh start closer to his mother and to provide for his 4 children. On the morning he vanished, Williams was driving his white Cadillac when he was stopped by Deputy Stephen Calkins near Naples Memorial Cemetery. Eyewitnesses observed Calkins place Williams into the back of his patrol car, and after that moment, Williams was never seen again. Felipe Santos was 23 years old when he went missing on October 14, 2003. A Mexican immigrant supporting his wife and child, Santos had been involved in a minor car accident on his way to work. Deputy Calkins responded to the incident and took Santos into custody. Calkins later told authorities that he changed his mind about arresting Santos and dropped him off at a nearby Circle K convenience store, but surveillance footage and other evidence failed to substantiate this claim. Santos, like Williams, has not been found since. Deputy Calkins' explanations of these events were riddled with inconsistencies that aroused suspicion. Phone records, surveillance footage, and witness statements contradicted his accounts, revealing discrepancies in the timeline and locations he provided. For the Santos case, many found it odd that Calkins dropped him off at a convenience store when the original accident scene was close by. This is especially odd when Santos's boss was said to arrive at the accident in order to assist Santos. When his boss found out about the supposed arrest, he visited the jail later that day in order to bail Santos out. That's when he found out that Santos was never processed or booked. From official records, Calkins reported clearing the call for the traffic accident at 7:35 a.m. He later stated he attended a law enforcement briefing but could not provide corroborating details or witnesses to confirm his presence. From 7:35 onward, there is a significant gap of unaccounted time, approximately 1 hour and 48 minutes, when Calkins' whereabouts could not be determined. This time window is critical to investigators and remains largely unexplained. And as mentioned, surveillance footage at the Circle K store showed no sign of Calkins or Santos. When Santos did not return home, his family immediately began searching for him. Over the following days, their inquiries led to growing concern. On October 29th, 2 weeks after his disappearance, his brother Jorge filed a missing persons report as well as a citizen's complaint against Calkins. The complaint specified that Jorge last saw his brother being placed into Calkins' patrol car and that Santos never returned. An internal investigation into Calkins' actions was opened by the Collier County Sheriff's Office. Within a month, however, he was cleared of any wrongdoing. The conclusions from this investigation were questioned by Santos's wife, Apollonia Cruz Cortez, who stated that key interviews had not been conducted and that her input was never requested. As for 27-year-old Terrence Williams, he did not possess a valid driver's license as it had been suspended due to a DUI, and the registration on on his white 1984 Cadillac had expired. On the morning of January 12, 2004, Williams left a house party where he'd spent the previous night and set out for his job at Pizza Hut. Eyewitnesses, including cemetery workers, saw Williams driving into the parking lot of Naples Memorial Cemetery located at 111th Avenue North and Vanderbilt Drive. He was wearing a short-sleeve shirt, blue jeans, and Timberland boots, and had his jewelry on him. Williams's vehicle was known to have engine problems and was eventually parked improperly. Calkins spotted the Cadillac and initiated a traffic stop. Cemetery employees who worked nearby watched as Calkins approached Williams, questioned him for identification, and patted him down. The staff observed as Williams, complying, was placed into the back of the patrol car. Calkins briefly interacted with the cemetery workers to seek permission to leave the Cadillac in the lot, then drove away with Williams still in custody. This occurred sometime between 9:30 and 10 a.m., contradicting Calkins's later accounts, which suggested the incident happened closer to 12:15 or 12:27 p.m. Approximately 45 minutes after the initial encounter, Calkins returned alone to the cemetery. He moved Williams's Cadillac from a parking spot to the side of the road and dropped the keys on the ground next to the driver's door. This act was witnessed by the cemetery staff. These same workers later became critical witnesses in establishing the timeline and refuting Calkins's varying versions of events. Calkins did not file a standard incident report, nor did he book Williams for any offense. When contacted by investigators and the Williams family, Calkins first denied any involvement with towed vehicles or arrests that day, but then changed his recollection, submitting a written account days later. In his eventual report, Calkins stated he did not arrest Williams, but gave him a ride to a Circle K convenience store located at Wiggins Pass Road and US 41. Calkins said Williams told him he worked at the Circle K, so the deputy dropped him off at that store so that he could, quote, retrieve some paperwork and call for a ride. After doing so, Calkins claims he called the Circle K to verify Williams's employment, and upon learning that Williams was not an employee, went back to the Cadillac to arrange for its tow. The tow report for the Cadillac was signed by Calkins, but he failed at first to mention having any interaction with Williams or having had any vehicles towed on that day until pressed for more information. And just like with Santos, the camera footage at the store showed no evidence that Calkins or Williams was ever present. Furthermore, Calkins claimed to have called the Circle K to verify Williams's employment, but phone records showed no such call was made from his phone. Of course, Williams did not return home after work, prompting his roommate Jason Gonzalez to grow concerned and contact Marsha Williams, Terrence's mother, on January 13th. They filed a missing persons report, and the family took the initiative to track down the Cadillac. Aided by the tow report, they discovered Deputy Calkins had arranged for its removal. The Williams family and Marsha then contacted the sheriff's office and reached out to cemetery staff, which led to further witness accounts detailing the entire interaction between Williams and the deputy. The growing inconsistencies prompted an official investigation, leading to forensic inspections of Calkins's vehicle and extensive searches in nearby woods and water. Despite these efforts, no trace of Terrence Williams was found. Though Calkins remained the last known person to see Williams, the sequence of events left a crucial, hours-long window in which Williams's fate remains a mystery. Investigators from multiple agencies analyzed dispatch logs, eyewitness accounts, phone records, and vehicle tow documents, consistently finding Calkins' accounts to be unsubstantiated by independent evidence. One of the most striking patterns revealed by internal sheriff's office documents was that in the 2 to 3 years preceding these cases, Deputy Calkins, despite logging nearly 400 incidents, had essentially stopped making arrests altogether, an unusual pattern for a patrol officer working in high-traffic areas. The cases of Williams and Santos gained wider national attention, notably when Tyler Perry, the filmmaker and activist, became involved. After encountering the story on Investigation Discovery, Perry offered a $200,000 reward for information leading to the resolution of the cases and produced a documentary series titled Never Seen Again to raise awareness. One prominent theory proposed to explain the disappearances is the Starlight Tour hypothesis. Originating in Canada, the term describes a police practice where officers would abandon individuals in remote locations, often leading to fatal outcomes due to exposure. Applying this to Williams and Santos, some speculate Deputy Calkins may have taken them to secluded parts of Collier County or even into the Everglades and left them there. However, detailed analyses of Calkins' movements on the days in question cast doubt on this, as timing and location records make a trip to the Everglades unlikely. Others believe that Calkins was directly responsible for their deaths, whether through intentional action or neglect. This belief fueled a wrongful death lawsuit filed on behalf of Terrence Williams' family by civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump. The suit alleged Calkins caused Williams' death, but the case was ultimately dismissed with a non-binding judgment in favor of Calkins. No criminal proceedings have been initiated, which remains a point of frustration and sorrow for the families. Alternative theories, mainly circulating in online forums and public discussions, ponder various conspiracy scenarios or systemic cover-ups, yet none are substantiated by credible evidence. What began as a routine Saturday opening on August 25, 1990 at an Osco store located in South Bend, Indiana, would culminate in a tragic crime, leaving 3 employees dead. Scott Dick, the 29-year-old assistant manager, was the first victim. Born in 1961, Scott had worked his way up through the ranks at Osco, earning the trust and respect of his colleagues and supervisors. As assistant manager, he carried significant responsibilities for the store's daily operations and was often among the first to arrive each morning. The employee who arrived first was typically responsible for deactivating the security alarm system and beginning the preliminary tasks necessary to open the store. According to Osco's electronic records, the store's alarm system was deactivated at precisely 7:36 a.m. on August 25th. This timing was consistent with the normal opening procedures and indicated that Scott had arrived and was beginning his routine tasks. Around the same time that the store's opening procedures were beginning, Amy Avery, an Osco employee, made her first visit to the store. Avery had stopped by the store at approximately 7:30 a.m. to purchase oil for her car, but found that the store had not yet opened for business. This timing was consistent with the store's normal operating schedule, as employees typically arrive to begin opening procedures around this time, but the store would not open to customers until later. This information helped investigators establish a timeline for the morning's events and provided context for understanding the sequence of activities that followed. In one of the last confirmed sightings of Scott alive, he was observed by an individual referred to as Dudek, who owned a nearby dry cleaning establishment, just before 8 a.m. According to Dudek's account, Scott had attempted to take a dress to the cleaners for his wife, but was unable to complete the transaction because the dry cleaning business had not yet opened. This sighting was particularly significant because it demonstrated that Scott was alive and well just minutes before the murders took place. The fact that he was attempting to run a personal errand for his wife showed that he was following his normal routine and had no awareness of any impending danger. As the morning progressed, several witnesses provided crucial information about activities in and around the store. Mary Karjewski, who was waiting in her vehicle at a nearby grocery store, observed Connie Zalewski and Tracy Holvoet, 2 Osco employees, entering the store just before 8 a.m. with a man whom they appeared to know. This observation was significant because it suggested that the victims may have been familiar with their attacker and that the crime did not involve a random stranger. Amy Avery made a second attempt to enter the store at approximately 8:02 a.m., again finding it closed to customers. However, during this visit, she walked up to the front doors, peered inside, and briefly caught a glimpse of a man inside the store whom she initially thought might have been Christopher Allen, the former manager. However, this identification proved to be problematic and inconsistent. 6 days after the murders, she was unable to identify the individual she had observed in the store. Later, after seeing Allen on television following his arrest, she contacted the prosecutor's office to inform them that the person they had arrested was not the same person she had seen in the store. At approximately 8:17 a.m., Jody Rennells, who was traveling from her home in Walkerton to a 9 a.m. hair appointment in Mishawaka, observed a car rapidly approaching an intersection about 20 miles southwest of the Osco store. Jody described the driver as an African-American male in his 20s with short hair and, quote, wide-open wild eyes. She described the vehicle as a two-door Ford Taurus that performed a fast roll-through at the intersection. Jody's observation was significant because it occurred at a time consistent with when the perpetrator would have been leaving the scene of the crime. However, her identification was problematic for several reasons. First, the location where she observed the vehicle was not on a direct route from South Bend to Indianapolis, where Allen lived. Second, Ford had never manufactured a two-door Taurus, casting doubt on the accuracy of her vehicle description. Despite these inconsistencies, Jody later identified Allen from a photographic lineup, claiming to recognize him as the driver she had observed for approximately 3 seconds. The reliability of this identification became a central issue in the subsequent legal proceedings, as it represented one of the key pieces of evidence linking Allen to the crime scene. At 8:18 a.m., Bernadette Claffey, another Osco employee, arrived at the store. She observed that Scott's car was parked close to the store rather than in its usual location. While this detail may have seemed meaningless, it was enough to set off Bernadette as she suspected that something was amiss. As she approached the store, she joined with Cheryl Jackson, who had arrived just after 8 a.m. and found the front doors still locked. Together, they walked around to the back of the store, where they discovered that the rear service doors were open and the alarm was sounding. This discovery marked the beginning of the realization that something terrible had occurred. An examination of the doors revealed that the vertical rods, which operated the top and bottom latches, were bent and disconnected. This physical evidence suggested that the perpetrator had used these doors as an exit route. After discovering the open rear doors and sounding alarm, Cheryl and Bernadette returned to the nearby grocery store and contacted Philip Kanoy, a South Bend police officer who was working security at the grocery store. Officer Kanoy immediately called for backup, and Officer Joseph Markovic arrived to assist. The officers entered the store at approximately 8:20 a.m., where they discovered the bodies of the 3 victims. The crime scene at the store presented investigators with an array of physical evidence that would play a crucial role in the investigation and subsequent legal proceedings. The store's 14,000 square foot layout provided numerous locations where evidence could be found, and investigators conducted an exhaustive search that lasted several days. The 3 victims were found in different locations within the store. Scott was discovered in the rear near the office area where much of the administrative work was conducted. The location of his body suggested that he had been confronted while performing his opening duties, possibly including accessing the store's safe system. Tracy Holvoet was found in the pharmacy area, the location where she would normally have been working. Connie Zalewski was discovered in another area of the store that was not disclosed. All 3 victims had been shot in the head. One of the most intriguing pieces of evidence found at the crime scene was a bloody note discovered next to Scott's body. The note contained the cryptic message, "White man, armor car uniform and badge." The note appeared to be an attempt by the perpetrator to misdirect the investigation. The reference suggested that the perpetrator wanted investigators to focus their attention on armored car personnel who might have had access to the store or knowledge of its operations. Additionally, police collected 198 footprints from various locations throughout the store, though none of these matched Christopher Allen's shoes when he later became a suspect. This absence of matching footprints became a significant point in Allen's defense during his subsequent trials. Of the 237 fingerprints collected from various surfaces in the store, investigators deemed 74 fingerprints and 33 palm prints to be of value for identification purposes. Most significantly, investigators found 2 fingerprints and 1 partial palm print belonging to Christopher Allen on the crash bar of the rear door. However, the discovery of these prints also raised questions about when they had been left, as an FBI analyst testified that he could not determine whether the prints had been there for, quote, 5 months, 5 minutes, or 5 years. Notably, no fingerprints were found on the store safe, the iron bar used to secure the rear doors or the front doors. The investigation also revealed that the culprit had successfully accessed the store's safe system and stolen over $6,000 in cash. The safe operated under a dual custody system with an upper portion available for daily use by store employees and a lower section reserved for armored car service. The design required both a key to unlock the combination dial and the actual combination for the lower half. When Christopher Allen had resigned from his position as manager on March 16, 1990, his keys had been confiscated and the locks on the safe had been changed. However, the combination to the lower portion of the safe, the key to activate the dial, and the locks on the front doors had not been changed. The forensic investigation revealed that 5 .44 caliber cast lead bullets were recovered. However, investigators were unable to determine whether all the bullets had been fired from the same weapon. As we've hinted at throughout the entry, former manager Christopher Allen was a key suspect early on. The first significant crack in his standing at Osco emerged through allegations of financial misconduct that would ultimately lead to his resignation. Allen was accused of embezzling approximately $5,400 through various means, including stealing cash, making long-distance telephone calls on the company phone, and overbilling for rental equipment. Importantly, Allen eventually made full restitution to the store, paying back the entire amount that had been embezzled. The embezzlement investigation also revealed Allen's sophisticated understanding of the store's financial systems. It was quickly revealed that Allen had maintained some connection to the store even after his termination. Detective Michael Swanson and other law enforcement officers pursued Allen as a suspect. Detective Swanson would visit Allen's residence and place of employment and leave his business card on the window of Allen's vehicle, attempting to gain a psychological edge on the suspect. In December of the same year, he anonymously sent Allen a Christmas card that contained the following typewritten message: "From all your friends at Osco's past, present, and deceased. Have a Merry Christmas, and we all hope to see you back here in South Bend real soon." At the time, Allen was married to Sherry's Garrett, and their residence was located approximately 100 miles from South Bend. The couple later divorced in 1991, and it was said to be a rather explosive breakup. The divorce occurred within a year of the murders, suggesting that the stress of the investigation and the allegations may have contributed to the breakdown of his marriage. Police detectives spoke with Garrett on numerous occasions, and at some point they discussed a $100,000 reward for information about the murders. FBI investigators also discussed the possibility of immunity for Sherry's, suggesting that they believed she might have information that could incriminate Allen. Despite these incentives, each time Garrett was questioned by police, she always maintained that Allen had been in bed when she went to sleep on August 25th, and that he was there when she awoke later that morning. As for the firearms, Allen was known to possess a .38 caliber pistol and an old double-barreled shotgun, both of which he inherited from his late father. Because Allen's wife disliked firearms, he kept the pistol in his vehicle. Around late July or late August in the same year of the killings, Allen decided to dispose of the pistol. This timing, just weeks from the murders, was obviously suspicious. Despite being identified as the prime suspect almost immediately, Allen was not charged with the murders until 1999, 9 years after the crimes occurred. This delay was primarily due to the reluctance of prosecutor Michael Barnes to bring charges based on the available evidence. In November 1991, after the investigation was substantially complete, the police chief urged Barnes to charge the case. However, he refused, indicating that he would have to omit relevant facts and circumstances in the probable cause affidavit, and that he could, quote, not ethically do that. It was also mentioned here that none of the 198 footprints matched any of Allen's shoes. Not only that, but Allen's fingerprints were not found on the crucial surfaces from the crime scene. While 2 of his fingerprints were found on the rear doors, it is important to remember that officials stated that it was impossible to declare with certainty if those prints were recent. As for the note, it was said that, quote, it is less than probable that Allen had written the note, but it's important to mention that some words were deemed to have potentially been written by Allen. The delay in charges became a political issue when Christopher Toth ran for St. Joseph County prosecutor in 1998, promising to prosecute the Osco murders. Christopher's campaign essentially made the prosecution of Allen a political platform, suggesting that the previous prosecutor had been derelict in his duties. Christopher was elected and took office on January 1st, 1999, and within months, charges were brought against Allen. Aside from Allen, evidence pointed to an alternative suspect. Stephen Bethel, an inmate, testified that he and Curtis Crenshaw had cased the Osco store several days before the murders. Bethel testified that on the morning of August 25th, Crenshaw told him, quote, he had just got some money and some people got hurt and got killed in it. Bethel further testified that Crenshaw showed him a handgun resembling a .44 Charter Arms Bulldog, refused to sell it to him, and described it as dirty. Bethel said he saw Crenshaw toss the gun into the St. Joseph River. There was no indication that Crenshaw's prints had been compared to those lifted at the scene. This oversight was particularly important because Crenshaw had been implicated in the crimes and would not otherwise have had access to the bar on the back door of the store. Ultimately, the possibility of linking him to the crime faded. As for Allen's trial, it began in June 2001 and resulted in a mistrial. Then, about a year later, the second trial began and Allen's defense tried to paint Crenshaw as the true killer. But in the end, on June 22, 2002, Allen was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder and robbery. He was sentenced to 144 years in prison. At sentencing, Allen maintained his innocence and accused police officers and prosecutors of unethical conduct, stating, "I can't offer remorse to the families for something I didn't do. I offer them sympathy." On August 9, 2004, the Indiana Court of Appeals reversed Allen's convictions in a decision that highlighted significant legal errors in the trial proceedings. The appellate court found that the trial court had committed reversible error in excluding both Bethel's testimony and expert evidence. Allen was released on bond on November 17, 2004, pending a retrial. The third trial began in June 2006 and incorporated the evidence that had been excluded in the previous trial. In an unusual procedural move, Stephen Bethel's testimony was recorded in the judge's chambers and later played for the jury. This allowed the jury to hear Bethel's account of Curtis Crenshaw's words without the complications that had arisen in the previous trial. Despite the inclusion of this previously excluded evidence, the third trial also ended in a hung jury on July 20th, 2006. On December 20th of the same year, Special Prosecutor Michael McAlexander announced that charges against Allen would be dismissed, effectively ending the prosecution's attempts to convict him. McAlexander noted that 11 of the 48 jurors who had participated in the 3 trials believed there was insufficient evidence to convict Allen. He stated, "I think as a prosecutor you have to face reality. No matter how much you believe in the case personally, you make a determination whether the facts and the evidence would be changed with a new additional jury. We have to be realists at times, whether we like it or not." The dismissal of charges against Allen left the South Bend Osco murders officially unsolved, creating lasting frustration for law enforcement and the victims' families. Detective Michael Swanson, who had led the investigation, continued to be haunted by the case years later. In 2015, on the 25th anniversary of the murders, Swanson said the following, "I feel bad for the families. Some went to the grave hoping for resolution and they never got it. I suppose everybody in the business has those cases that haunt them, and this is the one that haunts me." Phyllis Holvett, mother of victim Tracy Holvett, had expressed satisfaction with Allen's conviction in 2003, stating, "This is what we've been waiting for. I believe we got the right guy. No matter what he said, it will never change my mind." The subsequent reversal and ultimate dismissal of charges meant that the families never received the closure they had sought. The mystery of Tutz Honeychurch began around 2008 with an individual who has been sending thousands of bizarre, rambling emails to university staff, government employees, and random individuals across the globe. What began as seemingly random spam has evolved into a rather complex mystery. Honeychurch is a real person based in Hawaii. Multiple sources confirm her employment with TSA and the Department of Homeland Security at Honolulu International Airport. Her full name appears to be Tutz Honeychurch Rosa, but she occasionally goes by other aliases as well. It's not like Honeychurch is just some random obscure online figure. She actually has legitimate political credentials. In 2016, she ran as a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate from Hawaii. Her campaign committee was officially registered with the Federal Election Commission. During the Democratic primary held on August 13, 2016, she appeared on the ballot alongside incumbent Senator Brian Schatz and other candidates. Despite her candidacy, Honeychurch received only 1,800 votes, less than 1% in the primary election. As for the scope of Honeychurch's email campaign, it's nothing short of staggering in both its size and persistence. According to her own statements, she has been emailing entire staff directories of universities worldwide since 2008. She claims to have contacted amongst 1,000 plus professors at each university and approximately 300 different and repeating universities per month for 8 years. If accurate, this would represent contact with potentially millions of individuals across thousands of institutions. Her targets have included educational institutions such as Stanford, Oxford, Yale, Princeton, and numerous other distinguished universities. Government employees have been targeted through entire state government employee directories, including approximately 30,000 employees per state. School districts have also been contacted, with teachers in 208 public schools in Texas, 100 in Georgia, 30 in Oklahoma, 150 in Florida, and 100 in Virginia receiving her emails. The emails are known for their distinctive style and just general inconsistency in regards to their narratives. A typical email contains rambling personal narratives about family members, including detailed stories about her grandmother Kay Honeychurch, who allegedly suffered a mental breakdown and was sent to a mental institution. These stories often include references to luxury items like, quote, my white BMW convertible car loan, and various Hawaiian locations. The emails also feature bizarre conspiracy theories, mixing references to celebrities, historical figures, and government agencies. One email mentioned being kidnapped and needing to return to work at TSA with Adolf and Eva Jr. The email would go on to rant about the Germans and various political figures. Other emails mention things such as just joined 2 days before the World Trade attack, and various timeline inconsistencies make it difficult to establish any coherent narrative. Security researchers have analyzed Honeychurch's emails from a technical perspective. The emails often include attachments that have been flagged by malware analysis systems. However, these analyses suggest the attachments are not malicious software, but rather documents containing more of her rambling narratives, personal information, and occasionally what appears to be government identification or work materials. One of the most intriguing aspects of this case is the shared surname with victims of the notorious Bear Brook murders. In 2019, authorities identified 3 of 4 murder victims found in barrels in New Hampshire as Marlise Elizabeth Honeychurch and her 2 daughters, Marie Elizabeth Vaughn and Sarah Lynn McWaters. The Bear Brook murders were committed by serial killer Terry Rasmussen, who was in a relationship with Marlise Honeychurch when she and her children disappeared in 1978. Terry used multiple aliases, including Bob Evans, during his criminal career and was connected to several other murders across different states. It should be stated that the timeline makes any direct connection between Tutz and the Bear Brook victims unlikely. The murders occurred when victims disappeared in 1978 and were murdered between 1978 and 1981, while the emails began around 2008, nearly 30 years later. However, the coincidence of the shared surname has fueled speculation and added an eerie tinge to the mystery. Some investigators and internet sleuths have wondered whether there might be a familial connection or if the name similarity is purely coincidental. The phenomenon has expanded beyond email to include social media platforms. She maintains an Instagram account with about 22,000 followers. The account includes reels and posts that continue the pattern of unusual content that has characterized her email campaigns. The mystery has also found its way onto TikTok, where content about strange emails from Tutz has gained significant attention. Videos analyzing her emails and discussing the phenomenon have accumulated millions of views, with some users creating content exclusively about the mystery. Many who have encountered the emails believe they represent the thoughts of someone experiencing mental health challenges. The disjointed nature of the content, repetitive themes, and apparent disconnection from reality have led some to suggest conditions such as schizophrenia or other psychotic disorders. Evidence supporting this theory includes a stream of consciousness writing style that appears to reflect disordered thinking, repetitive themes about family members, persecution, and grandiose claims, temporal confusion with inconsistent timelines and dates, and paranoid elements including claims of kidnapping and conspiracy theories. Some observers have suggested that the Honeychurch phenomenon might be an elaborate performance art project or social experiment. However, it seems that most tend to lean toward the idea that the individual behind the emails is just dealing with mental health challenges. The emails continue to this day. George Mason University's most recent phishing alert mentioning her emails is dated July 2025, indicating that her email campaigns remain active. The consistency of these alerts over multiple years suggests an ongoing pattern rather than sporadic activity. Mitzi Sue Clements, often referred to as Susan, was born and raised in Ohio and, at the time of her disappearance in 2018, resided in Cleves, a suburban village located in the southwestern region of the state. She was 53 years old, a wife, and a dedicated mother of 3. Community members and friends have consistently described her as warm, compassionate, and devoted to her family. Susan worked as an accounting technician, and colleagues recalled her as reliable, hardworking, and attentive to detail. She enjoyed spending time outdoors, particularly hiking and exploring parks and nature trails. Her close friends and family often joined her on hiking excursions, both within Ohio and on trips farther afield. In late September 2018, Susan's family embarked on a trip to the Great Smoky Mountains, a national park straddling the border between North Carolina and Tennessee. Clingman's Dome, their intended hiking destination, is the highest point in Tennessee, rising to an elevation of over 6,600 feet. Prior to the hike in question, Susan and her family engaged in multiple outdoor activities around the park. This allowed the group to become more acclimated to the unpredictable weather as well as the environment in general. On September 25th, Susan and her 20-year-old daughter set out together on the Forney Ridge Trail. Their goal was to reach Andrews Bald, a grassy location about 2 miles from the trailhead. The trail's round-trip distance is typically manageable for reasonably fit hikers, so the family was confident that they could complete the trek with no issue. However, weather conditions on that Tuesday were far from ideal. Clingman's Dome and its surrounding peaks are often shrouded in a dense fog, with visibility dropping considerably in the late afternoons and evenings. These adverse conditions hampered both the initial family hike and would later become a major complicating factor in subsequent search and rescue activities. Around 5 p.m., Susan and her daughter were nearing the end of their hike to Andrews Bald. Once there, they came to an agreement. Susan's daughter would hike ahead to visit the Clingman's Dome observation tower, and they would meet back up at the parking lot. This decision was not considered risky, as the trail system near Clingman's Dome is well traveled and clearly marked, and both mother and daughter had ample hiking experience to navigate the terrain. From this point on, Susan was alone as she began making her way back toward the parking lot. According to family and park reports, Susan had no known health issues that would have made completing this distance problematic, nor was there any indication of fatigue or distress before the separation. When Susan did not appear at the parking lot as planned, her daughter retraced portions of the trail, attempting to find her. After searching to no avail and with growing urgency as evening approached, she reported her mother missing to park staff. This was the catalyst for an immediate and substantial search and rescue response. At the moment of her disappearance, Susan wore appropriate hiking attire for the conditions, but was reportedly lacking some advanced safety gear such as a GPS beacon or extensive survival tools, which are more typical among those embarking on longer, riskier wilderness routes. Weather conditions were deteriorating further as the evening progressed, amplifying the danger after sunset. The search for Susan quickly expanded to involve more than 125 searchers initially, with participation growing to over 175 personnel from more than 50 organizations spanning at least 5 states. Searchers utilized aerial support such as helicopters and drones, scent tracking dogs, and conducted extensive ground grid searches on foot. They covered over 500 miles of trails and roads and more than 10 square miles of off-trail terrain. The harsh weather greatly complicated the search. Persistent fog, heavy rain, and dropping temperatures hindered visibility and slowed the searchers' progress through the densely forested terrain. On October 2nd, 2018, 1 week after Susan's disappearance, a significant development occurred. Searchers exploring the remote Huggins Creek drainage, an area southwest of the Clements Dome parking lot and approximately 3/4 of a mile off the Appalachian Trail, came across her remains. This location was nearly 2 miles from where she was last seen, yet the trek involved navigating through some of the thickest vegetation and challenging terrain in the national park. The Pag Triangle is a natural land formation that has captured international attention since its discovery on May 9, 1999. The formation was discovered by Zdenko Grubovac, a Croatian surveyor from Zadar who was conducting land measurements for a proposed quarry near the village of Kaska on Pag Island. The specific location is described as being on a hill called Bald Head, and it has been designated as a natural landmark by the town of Novalja. The triangle measures 32 meters on 2 sides and 22 meters on the 3rd side, covering an area of approximately 500 square meters. The rocks within the triangle exhibit a noticeably lighter color compared to the surrounding landscape. The stones inside the triangle are described as round and cylindrical in shape, suggesting they have been worked into shape by some natural process. At each corner of the triangle, there are 30-centimeter deep holes, which add to the formation's mysterious appearance. These holes remain unexplained and contribute to the various theories about the triangle's origin. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Pag Triangle is the red phosphorescence emitted by the rocks when exposed to ultraviolet light. This phosphorescence is considered evidence that the rocks were exposed to extreme temperatures in the past, similar to conditions found in volcanic activity. However, no volcanic activity has ever been recorded on the island of Pag, making this phenomenon particularly puzzling to scientists. Based on the degree of radiation and other properties, geologists have estimated that the triangle was formed approximately 12,000 years ago. Despite extensive interest from various scientific communities, no definitive explanation has been found for the Pag Triangle's formation. The most widely discussed scientific theory suggests that the triangle is a natural result of the island's karst terrain processes formed by water erosion and weathering patterns over millennia. There are, of course, other natural theories that spring up, but there are also a number of people who believe the triangle is of extraterrestrial origin. Croatian ufologists have proposed that the triangle represents a UFO landing site. This theory is based on the formation's geometric precision and the evidence of extreme heat treatment in the rocks. The theory suggests that an extraterrestrial spacecraft landed on the site, superheating the rocks and creating the distinctive impression on the land. Other researchers suggest the formation was created by a highly developed ancient civilization that inhabited the area tens of thousands of years ago.